There are patterns everywhere in nature.
I want to make a paradise.
It's a reason to get up in the morning.
I'm an old, broken-down piece of meat, and I'm alone.
It's gonna be amazing.
Remember, I chose you for a reason. I trust you. Okay. Show me.
You fly too high, you'll get burned.
There will be no order, only chaos.
One of Darren's current passions is pioneering immersive virtual reality. To explain how tech is changing storytelling, please welcome to the stage in conversation with senior writer at Wired, Lauren Good, the ever-talented Darren Aronofsky.
Thank you for being here.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we heard it was going to be a fireside chat, and this feels more like a basketball game, but it's fantastic to be here. So Patty alluded to this briefly, but one of your more recent projects is in virtual reality. And in fact, it got a lot of attention at Sundance earlier this year. Why did you decide to pursue a project in VR?
Well, there was a young filmmaker behind it, a woman named Eliza McNitt. She's 26 years old, extremely passionate, trying to combine science with storytelling, which is something that everyone at my company has been trying to do. My company is called Protozoa. I come from a science background, so whenever science can be part of filmmaking, it's really interesting to me. And what Eliza was doing was taking viewers in virtual reality to impossible location in the cosmos. So she created a virtual reality that allows you to experience two black holes colliding, being inside of a black hole, and explores the different sounds of space. And it was something I hadn't seen before, and a really good use of the medium because it definitely transforms where you are. When Robert Redford did it at Sundance, he fell over, which everyone was concerned about, but I was excited because it just was a good headline, and it gives you a true emotional experience of experiencing the cosmos.
I mean, I think that's one of the benefits of VR for people who maybe haven't experienced it yet, is that it really does put you into that environment and can certainly trigger an emotional response, but there's still that barrier, right, of having to get someone to wear something on their face in order to experience that.
But it's a pretty convincing world. I mean, it's very different than storytelling and filmmaking. And I think if you talk to the latest thinkers in virtual reality, there's a clear line. For a long time, people were talking about how virtual reality was going to replace film. And it may replace it in how people decide to spend their time and their leisure time, but it's two different art forms. And most people who are working in virtual reality and most filmmakers are aware of that trying to blend them is really not working. You know, when you see video games, I think as a video game player myself, and you get to those cut scenes that sort of where they basically put a movie into the middle of a video game, they're kind of cool for a little bit, but then they get pretty tedious. And I think the most successful creators are people who are really establishing that they're two different environments, two different worlds. Storytelling is I wouldn't say it's a passive experience, but it's a very different experience than being in a experience that you're controlling and guiding where it's going to go.
Right, and that kind of follows the history of media in general, right? Television wasn't just radio with pictures, and web video is not just TV chopped up. I mean,
it is kind of web video is kind of. But,
people in this room should work on that. But I mean, in a lot of ways, you're expressing that this is an entirely new medium, and so things should be designed and created as such.
Yeah, I remember when I was in film school in the early 90s, and Jaron Lanier was out there talking about the data glove, is that what they call it? And all that stuff. We were all thinking about it and terrified, but I think it's become clear it's when you're watching a movie, you're not passive, right? It's truly an act in empathy. That's the great part of filmmaking, is you can sit there and you can, through close-up, enter the subjective experience of a character who takes you on a journey and on a trip where you basically experience what that character is going through, your own humanity. In virtual reality, there's less character involved. You can sort of stumble on some of that stuff, but it's more about just feeling, it's very experiential, and you're much more yourself. You're not sort of transformed, I feel, into another person's shoes.
Do you plan to produce more projects in VR?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately we're storytellers, and so we're interested in communicating stories in any way you can, and sometimes it's narrative, sometimes it's documentary, like we did with One Strange Rock. We're just trying to put really good content out there with really good creators.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, what would you say has been the most influential technology on what you do as a filmmaker?
Wow. I mean, it's funny because when I did my first film, Pi, the first time a film was downloaded on the internet was Pi in 2000. And I remember when they came to us and said, oh, we want to download, I had no idea really what they were talking about, but it's funny because basically most people are going to experience film purely through a streaming service at this point. It also, Pi was the first time a title sequence had been done digitally. Yet there's no visual effects in the entire movie. And then in a movie like Mother, which isn't really a visual effects film, there's probably 1,400 visual effects in that film that are really subtle things to really big things. But I think that's the use of computers to help a filmmaker shape exactly what he or she wants to make and create has definitely been the biggest breakthrough. I think when I started filmmaking or like watching movies in the 70s and 80s, there were 2 or 3 of the kind of Gandalfs out there, Spielberg and George Lucas, who had this thing called ILM, and only they really could use computers to do stuff. And now it's become everyone, and every movie basically can do anything they want with the camera, to creating a world like Avatar, to sort of subtle effects like we did in Mother.
Or like Noah, I mean, where you CGI
Noah was a big,
animals.
Exactly, and basically a film like Noah would have never been possible when I first thought of it 20 years earlier. It only just becomes possible because of computers. So I think it's unlocked the possibility of what you can do and what type of stories you can tell.
Is there a point for you at which you think technology's influence on storytelling is too much? It goes to the dark side.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of filmmakers have lost control of that. I think films have become visual effects extravaganzas, and now you have these huge teams that are creating shots for movies, these big, we won't say exact titles, but you'll get filmmakers that aren't really interested in that part of the filmmaking, and they're really there just to work with the actors, and then you have huge teams creating these incredible landscapes. But then you have filmmakers like James Cameron, who's in complete control of everything and overlooking all of it and creating a singular vision where every single shot is chosen, if it's in virtual reality, if it's in a virtual setting or if it's in a real setting.
I had the chance to work on a story earlier this year about a group of filmmakers who had basically taken thousands of scripts, put them through TensorFlow, Google's machine learning system, and spit out a script for them. Totally written by an AI, and then it was with Thomas Middleditch.
How did that work out?
The script's not so great. If you watch this video, you can find it. Thomas Middleditch from HBO Silicon Valley was a part of it. He's done this a few times now. But the reality, and another point too, they were doing face swapping in the videos, which is now a very real technology. So, I mean, at what point do you, excuse me, do you think that AI fundamentally changes what you do as a storyteller, as a writer, and as a director?
Well, it's a terrifying thought, but I don't know, when jokes and humor and stories start to be able to be reproduced where you can't tell the difference between them and the human counterparts is a strange moment. I guess there was a big piece of art that sold at auction. Did you read about that? That was based on some code, and it sold for a few $100,000, and it was created by an AI. I don't know, storytelling is a very tricky thing, and I'm going to be a bit of a Luddite right now and put my faith in the constant invention of individuals to do something that a computer won't. But I know there was a documentary on the computer that beat the Go player. Mm-hmm. And the thing that was most interesting about that for me was, besides the fact that it beat a human for the first time, which everyone thought was impossible, was that how the computer played actually ends up affecting how humans play after that game happened. So the computer actually are not just beating us, but they're actually teaching us ways of approaching it. So I imagine that you can work with an AI to feel different solutions. I mean, it happens in digital editing. You know, a film like Requiem for a Dream, which was one of the first films to, you know, work with an Avid and work with digital editing machines, or at least for me it was. We were able to do incredibly complicated editing sequences that, if we were working traditionally, the human hours of cutting something up like that would have taken forever. So we've got many more ways of looking at material, which is something I think has changed the way filmmaking is done as well because of technology.
Absolutely, and you're somebody who likes to shoot a lot and edit and spend your time really editing. I read that one of your films took, I think, more than a year in post.
Mother took about 50 weeks.
50 weeks, and so we might not be that far off from an AI actually picking your selects for you and expediting that process.
That's a tricky thing because picking selects is all about reading emotion and feeling emotion. And it's interesting, there's that ancient Eisenstein test where they took a woman's face that was neutral and they stick a baby crying and then they cut it with a lion roaring, and it's the context that tells you what the woman is feeling. So I think it's a very hard thing, I think, for an AI to actually understand with context or even without context what a human being is feeling. So I think that when you get into the face swapping, it's all about the truth of emotion and really reducing things to what makes us human, what makes us people. So it may be the last thing we hold on to that keeps us away from AI.
Is that sense of human emotion, that instinctual drive that you have when you're making your films?
Yeah, I think that's what you're always looking for, is you're trying to create truthful characters that have honest emotions, that have strong emotions, because once again, watching a movie, when you look at a close-up of a movie star, it's the only place in the world where you are transported, where you're not self-conscious of yourself. Because even in this conversation between me and you and these thousands of people, I'm trying to focus on to the kind of thoughts that I'm having, and also not to look at you too much because it'll get awkward and make us both feel uncomfortable.
Well, I'm actually a robot, so you don't have to worry
There's no
about
feedback.
that.
But I think when you watch a movie, you're in a dark room staring at someone and you don't actually have to think about yourself. You're able to fully put your focus and concentration into the person on the screen, and that allows you to sort of be connected through your empathy to that person and go on this journey with that person and understand their issues and their problems and their situation. And that's the beauty of storytelling and filmmaking, is that you can watch, you know, a movie from anywhere in the world, and if it's well told with honest emotion, everyone in the world, everyone in this room will understand it and take away a similar thing.
But it's not just the production of film that's being impacted by technology, it's also the distribution and how people are watching things. I mean, now online streaming services have so much data about how people are watching things, what they're enjoying, what they're clicking on, even eye tracking, where their eyes are going in an interface as they're scrolling through movies. I mean, do you ever think about how having that amount of data, even at your fingertips, could impact what you're thinking about when you think about I don't get the sense you're a person who really thinks about, like, how am I going to please an audience, but do you think about that?
I don't ever think you can fully predict the future. I mean, maybe the popularity of an actor or the popularity of a location can allow, but I think what's exciting about art and about film is that it ultimately isn't a widget, and the thing that makes something different is sometimes what makes it special. When I was putting together Black Swan, everyone in all of Hollywood and all financial places turned it down. Everyone said no, because the main point was horror fans don't like ballet, and ballet fans don't like horror. So we had to go and we had to beg and scream, and even when we finished the film and we had a finished product and we were starting to show it to people, we really had no idea what it was going to become and how big it was going to get. And even 2 weeks into the release, no one really understood what the movie was. So, I don't know if an AI could have helped with that to figure out, oh, you have Natalie Portman and Vincent Cassel and do some type of formula and realize that it's actually going to work for people. Maybe, I don't know how sophisticated these things will get, but a lot of it was just unexpected, and like the idea, the Black Swan idea of something out of the ordinary. Black Swan itself was a Black Swan event.
I think we're almost out of time, but I did want to ask you one more question about your environmental work. So you're a board member of the Sierra Club, and a lot of at least a couple of your films have focused on the environment and Earth in some way. There are a lot of people here who are involved in helping and changing the environment. What's the one thing that you would ask the people in this room to consider with regards to the environment?
That's a good question. I do think it's the paramount issue of our time. All other issues, sort of pale in comparison when you don't have a home to live in. And people have always asked me, it's this overwhelming feeling of what can I do, and suddenly a lot of pessimism shows up, but I'm an incredible optimist in that I've seen amazing things happen and change really quickly. And I do believe in our future. And when people ask me, what am I going to do? Do I unplug certain things? It comes down to one thing. We really have to rely on governments to change and to help us move into this new future. And so, if I have one message on the eve of the election, it's vote for people who believe in science. That's all you can do. Vote for people who believe in science. Just as a final thing, it's funny because the same people who really believe in Twitter and the power of that you can write something on your phone and communicate to millions of people instantly are the same people who don't believe that humans are the cause of climate change. And it's the same scientists are telling that both things are true. So you can't really cherry pick science. You have to sort of accept it all or accept none of it.
It sounds like you're saying you can't really cherry pick responsibility.
Exactly.
Personal responsibility. Darren, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure
nice
chatting.
to be here. Good luck.